Okay, we'll get started and hope the rest pop in very shortly. Phil, I'll hand over to you to open the session as you have done previously.
Thanks, Sam. Welcome everybody. I mean, I've heard Richard speak before and numerous times, and I know that we're going to be in for an excellent session. Sorry, a big build up for you, Richard, but absolutely, you know, the times I've heard you speak, it's been absolutely brilliant. So I doubt that anybody will not take anything away from this that's going to be useful for their refereeing. That's an impossibility when you hear Richard speak. So welcome, and over to you.
Well, that is a massive build-up, massive. Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you to those that have joined. Really appreciate you taking the time to do so. Just bear with me 30 seconds, then while I share my screen. I've got a slide or two that I just need to bring up. Okay, now then, I'm just gonna use Sam as my guide here a little bit, just to check that what I can see, you can see. Sam, you can see the number 7 and nothing else at the moment.
Yep, number 7 and nothing else.
Wonderful, we're all good then. Great. So smashing. So my name's Richard Glynne-Jones. I'm one of the FA's national referee managers. Really pleased to be here this evening. The session, it will be a short session, probably 30 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes. Depends a little bit on how involved everybody gets, of course, but shortish session. And the topic is around getting the best out of yourself. Now, what I aim to try and do here a little bit is just provoke you. That may be too strong a word, but let's use it anyway. To think about what you might need to do differently, what you might do differently to be the best you can be. And I'm going to talk fairly generally, I suppose, with no particular focus on refereeing necessarily. But what I hope you'll see is that there is linkage throughout. I think if I was to, I guess if I was to ask any of you, and I won't, but if I was to ask any of you what you need to do to become a better referee, you'd probably talk about, you know, being committed, being able to cope with the pressure, being focused, practicing imagery, practicing in a quality way, being well organised, and you know the list potentially goes on really. But what I'm going to do is not focus on those things that are very specific to refereeing. Instead, I'm going to try and share seven tips that I hope go beyond, a little bit beyond refereeing, and which I hope will be of benefit to you. So tip number 1, look out for one another. Look out for one another. It's a tough gig refereeing. It's a tough gig match officiating. I don't know what your individual roles are, whether you're referees, assistants, coaches, observers, mentors, doesn't matter. It's a tough gig, and one thing is for sure, you can't succeed on your own. Just before I go on, actually, what I would say is, if anybody's got any questions at any point, just bang them in the chat box, and I will ask a question or two. There's not many people on the call, so it'd be really great if you can get involved as I ask a question or two. But these guys that you see here, the Navy SEALs, one of the world's most elite fighting forces, and actually, because of that, very, very tricky to get in. Not easy to become a Navy SEAL. Very experienced SEAL was once asked them, what sort of person makes it through training to become one? How do you get to become a Navy SEAL? This guy replied, well, actually, I'm going to tell you the types of people who don't become one. So it's not the tough guys. It's not the super fit college, university athletes. It's not the people who aren't prepared to get their hands dirty. The guys who make it all have one thing in common, and that is this: that when they've got nothing left to give, when they're on their very last legs, they're able to look to their left, look to their right, look at their mates, and somehow find the energy to help that person next to them. So, you know, it's not about how tough you are. It's not about how fast you are, how smart you are. It's all about looking after your mates, and in this context, your refereeing colleagues, whatever the circumstances might be. So it is tricky refereeing. It really is. You're very unlikely to be able to deal with everything that's thrown at you alone. Same applies. Definitely the same applies for your friends. So a couple of messages just ask you to consider really here, and that is this: don't plow your own furrow here. Offer to help your mates, offer to help your colleagues, offer to help your assistant referees, offer to help people involved in the refereeing communities. And actually that's one of the real strengths I think about refereeing, that the communities are very, very strong. Don't be afraid to ask for help. That's really important as well. It's so easy to think that you can manage on your own, when actually, you know, asking for help can be just a great thing to do to help you on track. And look, when you're offered help, accept it, because actually what you will discover is there are people out there who are very prepared to help, and actually might not ask you because they don't think that you'll accept it. So do be prepared to accept help when it's offered. The question then really is, how is this relevant to you as referees, as match officials? And there's only a few of you here, and so look, I'd really encourage you just to try and get involved at this point. How is this business of looking out for one another relevant to you? If any of you got any experiences of where it's really been beneficial to you or somebody else, where you've looked after somebody, where you've helped somebody to get through a challenging time? I can't see any faces, unfortunately, so shooting a little bit blind here, but if anybody would like to stick the hand up, show their face, or pop something in the chat box at this point, that would be excellent. I'll just give it. Is that Keradig? Is that right? Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, that's a darn decent first attempt.
Splendid, Keradig. Excellent. Look, thanks for getting involved. So what do you reckon here?
I'm going to flip it around slightly. In for the fact it is probably more asking for the help and then accepting it, and the benefit of somebody helping you out. Because I'm relatively newly qualified. I think, Sam, was it February 2020, like right at the start of the pandemic? Yeah. So when the 2021 season started, I was doing quite a lot of games as a fairly young referee, and kind of not lost my way, but you start getting those doubts in. You know, the tough games, you're like, am I doing things right? I'm not sure. And it was the ability to be able to reach out, ask for, you know, if somebody just come and have a look, just to cast their eye over. And Sam was kind enough to arrange for somebody to, you know, just to come in and just check out and observe a few games as we went along, and just being able to have the confidence to ask for help, you know, about 10 to 15 games into the season, really then I think gave me the confidence that I wasn't as far out as I thought I might be, and just built a really nice platform to then sort of build experience, confident that I wasn't as bad as I thought I was, because you get yourself into that negative headspace. So yeah, the asking and accepting was really useful, and obviously, you know, the volunteering from you know, mentors and stuff is really valuable as well.
Brilliant, Kerry. Thanks for sharing. You highlighted such an important point there. And if I'm paraphrasing slightly, perhaps, and I hope I capture this accurately, but from what you're saying, there was probably a little bit of a lack of confidence fairly early in your refereeing career, not sure if you're doing the right thing, and you were able to ask for help, in this case from Sam, who was able to provide it. And I know very few people in the refereeing community who would not be prepared to help if you asked them for it. So I'm delighted the way that you shared that, actually, because it illustrates the point absolutely perfectly. In that instance, you know, Sam's looked out for you. He's asked possibly a mentor to come and have a look. Everybody's looking out for each other. Can't do this on your own. Cannot do it on your own. So, Kerry, thanks for sharing. That's excellent. So, tip number one, everybody, look out for one another. Make sure your mates are okay. If you need help, make sure that you ask for it. There's plenty of people there who'll be prepared to help you, that's for sure. All right, so I suppose a bit of a similar theme here, and the second tip, I suppose, is around looking after yourself. And the question I'll ask you, but I don't want you to answer it at this stage actually. But is this really what is more important to your ability to perform well? What is going to help you perform better? Is it excellent physical health, or is it your mental health? No need to answer that. But what I can tell you is that if you ask that question to 100 people right now, they'd hesitate significantly, and probably a larger percentage would talk about their physical health being more important, because it's that gets them on the park in the first place. Now, I like to think about the importance of your mental health, really. I'm guessing, you know, all of you, lots of us do. We spend plenty of time looking after our physical health, and actually sometimes we forget about how important our mental health can be. If there are 100 people on this call now, then the statistics would tell us that 25 of those people would have a mental health problem right at this very moment. And actually, practicing self-care can lessen the symptoms of mental health problems, might even prevent them from developing, actually. And what I want to do is just share with you something called the 5 ways to well-being. And forgive me if this is old news to you, but this is really important, because actually, whilst there are plenty of people you can go to get support for your mental health, the key here is to try and look after yourself as best as you possibly can to prevent the onset of mental health problems. And there are ways that you can do that. And the way this is framed, and this is a mind diagram, but you know, you can pick this up anywhere really. But the way this is framed is that there are 5 things, if you like, 5 ways that you can help yourself. And it is important, because your mental health is just as important as your physical health. And I think it's coming to the fore more and more, but it's really, really important that you remember that as a referee. So the first bit is about connection, connecting with others. The more you do this, the better the chances are that you either won't experience mental health problems, or that they will be lessened, or that they will be helped. So there really is strong evidence that says that feeling close to and valued by others really does contribute to functioning well. Social relationships are critical to acting as a buffer against mental health problems, really. So, you know, pick up the phone, call rather than emailing, go to training events that Sam will run. And outside of refereeing, because let's remember that actually there's a whole world outside of refereeing here. Don't get too sucked into everything being about refereeing. You know, make time for other stuff, to visit your friends, your family, and speak to them, and so on. So the second bit then is around being active, and again, I apologise if I'm repeating stuff that may be really obvious to you, but regular physical activity is absolutely associated with lower rates of depression and anxiety right across the age groups. I am going to ask you all actually shortly what you do to look after your own mental health in a second, but let's just give some context here. So, you know, you're training for your refereeing, training with refereeing colleagues, actually, because then you're hitting two birds really with that one stone. In that you're connecting at the same time as being active. So really important. Third one then is about taking notice. So being aware of what's going on around you, being aware of what's taking place, you know, in the present moment, and savor that moment. Some of you might have heard of the expression "be here now," and it's a bit of management speak, that really. But you know, if you're in meetings, you know, don't have the laptop off. Don't be thinking about, you know, what you might be doing that evening. Really focus on the here and now, and that is known to help people focus mentally as well. Don't know if any of you are cricketers or watch the cricket, but Michael Vaughan, who ex England captain, when he's struggling at the crease, actually, he has a little trick where actually each shot that he plays, he ranks it out of 10, and that's his way of staying in the moment. And the more that you can do that, the more likely you are to be able to stave off mental health difficulties. Penultimately, then, keep learning. We know that continued learning enhances self-esteem. You gain more knowledge, you gain confidence, your self-esteem improves. Setting goals is associated with higher levels of mental being as well, which can come from the learning bit. So, you know, self-analyzing your refereeing performance is perhaps something that's a little bit referee specific here. Seeking feedback from others, and that's really relevant, isn't it, to refereeing. Seek feedback from others, which will help you to continue to keep learning. We know that helps your mental well-being. And then finally, give. So we also know that people who have an interest in, who do actually help others, are far more likely to rate themselves, and that's a funny way of saying it, I suppose, but rate themselves as happy. And I suppose the obvious example in refereeing is mentoring, coaching, observing, but you know, it goes beyond that, doesn't it? I wonder if any of you are involved in WhatsApp groups, for example, where you've got refereeing colleagues that you speak to regularly, that you give advice to, that you provide feedback to, whatever it is. And it links back to not plowing your own furrow here, actually, really. Be prepared to give, because you can bet your bottom dollar that's going to help you feel an awful lot better. So quite a generic model there, but I'd be really interested to know from people how you go about looking after your own mental well-being. And if you want to put something in the chat group, that's fine. Again, if you want to stick your hand up and say as well, that'd be great. And if you don't do any of these things, that's fine as well. But it would be interesting to know perhaps why. So I'll just give it 30 seconds if anybody would be happy to share. No, all right, that's fine. Oh, hold on, we got Cardig's in. Yeah, so Cardig's talking about the program called Headspace. Yeah, absolutely right. And Cardig, I think, just to sort of build on that point, really, there are plenty of places you can go for advice on mental health and improving your mental well-being. Without question, it's becoming increasingly important. Of course, more and more people are talking about mental health, which is magnificent, by the way. That is absolutely fantastic. And you can seek out ways that you can help your own mental well-being. I think the message I'd like to leave you with on this really is, don't neglect your mental health. Don't neglect it. Lots of referees focus very hard on the physical health of pre-season training, and then nutrition and the diet and all of these things, and of course that links into the being physically active bit. But let's remember that actually your mental health, particularly when you're facing times of stress, I suppose, within refereeing, and that happens, sadly, is so important. Cardig's got his hand up. Yes, please, Cardig, fire away.
So I should not have had the extra coffee. Yeah, it was a follow-up from yesterday's session, actually, which linked quite nicely into this, because it was I think it was Kevin Friend who was talking about stress and management, and he had written this papery thing and sort of had a shufty through it, and he was talking about how external stress factors actually can make our refereeing worse. So if we're not fully concentrated for a game and our attention starts wandering because we're depressed or down, or we've had a bad night, or we've got a big situation coming up outside and all the rest of this, that's going to make or potentially could lead us to making mistakes on the field and decisions, which then starts the negative cycle of, oh, I've got that wrong, better not do another one, whoops, and then it reinforces that. So yeah, and I think he also sort of inferred that you can be 80% fit and get through a game and be fine, but if you're not 100% mentally fit, then that has a far bigger impact on your performance as a referee potentially, as well, which I thought was quite an interesting sort of angle.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. And again, thanks for sharing that. And let's just to sort of, I suppose, draw out one or two of the key points from that. You know, sometimes things will happen, won't they? In the same way that you might do your hamstring in the warm up and you can't referee. Sometimes something might happen the day before the game or the morning of a game that affects your mental health, and that is unavoidable sometimes, completely unavoidable. But what we can do in daily, weekly, monthly is practice this self-care, is think about connecting, being active, all of these things we've just talked through, so that, you know, actually when you get to game day, you're in the best possible state of mind. Things will happen that you can't control, which affect you. That's out of you. That's sometimes out of your control. But what you can control is being active, is connecting, is giving. All of these things, you can control these things. They will make you feel better. So if you're not doing some of these things, go away, have a reflect, think about it. Might be for you, might not, but worth giving a go. I would definitely say. Okay, so just moving on. So third one then, play the long game. Play the long game, and I think this is so relevant to refereeing. And I think we only have to consider how long it currently takes to become a Premier League referee from when you start. Now, I can tell you that colleagues of mine are looking at ways to change that, but playing the long game is really important. Let me just tell you a little story to try and bring some of these things out. So I'm going to take you back to 1989 to Merchant Taylor School, Crosby, and there were two people doing their A levels, and let's call the first one Richard, shall we? A talented linguist was this Richard. Did well in his A levels, went off to Bristol University to study modern languages. Richard had his heart set on being a teacher of French, of German, did his degree. Sadly, found himself in significant debt, and he knew that if he was going to fulfill his ambition to become a teacher, he was going to have to do another year and do the PGCE, which meant another year of not earning, another year of going further into debt. Now, at this point in his life, Richard could not see beyond his nose, and so decided he'd rather earn some money rather than looking way beyond his nose to the future. Started working in advertising sales, and actually his kind of ambition of becoming a teacher ended at that point. Fell into a career for the early stages, at least, for which he had little interest or motivation. So Richard, in this case, couldn't see beyond his nose, could not play that long game, couldn't see the goal beyond the horizon, wasn't prepared to make the year-long sacrifice for the rewards that would have come in the future. But Richard had a friend, and his name was David. David wanted to be a doctor. Did all right in his A levels, but not well enough to be accepted into medical school to do his degree. So he had a choice to make. Did he give up on that dream and go and do a different degree because his results were all right? They were all right. Or did he retake in the expectation, the hope he would get the necessary results second time round? That's what he did. He retook. He sacrificed that year. All his friends were off at university having a whale of a time. He played the long game. He sacrificed that year. He went and retook his A levels. He's now a consultant pediatrician, earning an awful lot of money, getting great fulfillment, and is pretty set. Difference between those two individuals: one was able to play the long game. One could see the future way beyond his nose. The other one could not. You don't go to the gym, do you? You don't go to the gym on a Monday morning and expect to have huge guns the following day. That takes time. It takes commitment. It takes lots of time. It takes weeks and months and years and dedication. Don't expect that to happen overnight. You don't get your partner to fall in love with you, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your wife, your husband, whatever, whoever that might be. You don't get that to happen after the first day. It takes time. It takes nurturing. Takes years. You know, it takes lots of accumulation of little things for that to happen. Always be prepared to play the long game. Make sure you're moving in the right direction, though. And I think with refereeing, this is so important. There is no miraculous shortcut. There just is not a miraculous shortcut. Don't be counting the minutes. Don't be counting the hours. You know, think about when you're on a treadmill, and it happened to me this afternoon. It happens every time I go to the gym, actually. And I'm either running or cross training or whatever it might be. And I look down at that clock, and when I look down at that clock that time, it just hasn't moved on. Try and forget about the minutes. Try and forget about that short term, and always have your eye on the future. If you want to be successful, have that eye on the future, and be prepared to fail as well. Do be prepared to fail, because that's the only way you're going to get valuable insights that will help you to achieve success. Let me ask you again, just to throw it open to the floor. Does that resonate with anybody? That perhaps some of you have been impatient and have failed to see the long or play the long game in refereeing. Does that resonate with anybody at all? No? All right. Absolutely fine. No problem at all. But do have this at the forefront of your mind. If there are again, not many of you here today, but if some of you, Ceredig, you've sort of talked about, I don't know how long ago it was that you did the course. I'm sensing you're still a relatively new referee. You might have your eyes on the Premier League. That's great. You know, have that 18 months. There we go. So still in your infancy, really, in your refereeing career. Have that goal in your mind, but be prepared to play that long. Oh, he's too old for the Premier League. All right, let's just pretend you were 23, Ceredig, and then you could play the long game. 41, it's crazy. Not too old. Never too old. All right, let's shift on. So next one. Next little tip, really, and you might want to just have in the back of your mind the business of feedback sessions here, and this is about. It's not really about listening. It's about learning to be the last to speak. So, Nelson Mandela. I'm sure you all have heard of Nelson Mandela, South Africa's first black head of state. Absolutely focused on dismantling the legacy of apartheid, tackling institutionalized racism, fostering racial reconciliation. Sounds very grand, that, doesn't it? But those of you that will know who Nelson Mandela is, and I hope you all do, will know what I'm talking about here. Absolutely perceived to be a very successful individual. He actually is. It's well documented, actually, that he learns a lot from his father. His father was a tribal leader in South Africa, and a young Nelson would accompany his father to the tribal meetings with all the elders, which would be chaired by Nelson Mandela's father. What Nelson Mandela observed with his father was always the last person to speak. He kept his opinions to himself while others spoke. He then asked great questions, really, to be able to understand their opinions. And by being the last person to speak, he enabled the others to share their opinions, to give them the feeling that they've been heard and they've been able to contribute fully. What Nelson Mandela came to understand here was that actually, you know, his dad was able to acquire huge amounts of knowledge, and that ultimately helped his decision making. So I do think this story has some can resonate with refereeing, because actually one of the best ways that we are all going to develop, and this doesn't matter whether you're a mentor, a coach, an observer, a referee, an assistant referee, is through great feedback. Actually, it's through great feedback. But whether you're a referee or a mentor or a coach, don't jump in. Take a step back, listen to other people's opinions, And don't tell people what you think until you've heard their opinions. And that's a tricky skill to manage. I think sometimes, particularly for observers and mentors and coaches who generally are experienced individuals who've got lots of information, lots of stuff that they want to impart and tell. Don't fall into that trap. Be the last to speak. Let others speak first. They'll respect you for it. And more importantly, or as importantly, you will acquire knowledge that will help you to better understand what's going on, that will better enable you to ask better questions and be better at what you're doing. We've all been told about listening, haven't we? Throughout our lives, our parents tell us we need to listen. Our teachers tell us we need to listen, and dare I say, our partners, our wives, boyfriends, girlfriends tell us that we need to listen. But I think the message here is slightly different. Be the last to speak, as tricky as that can be. Moving on, we're on to the last couple of messages here, really. So I'll try and draw this out through a little story as well. Except that sometimes, actually, you're going to be in the problem. How many times have people said to you? You may have said it to others. Take a good look in the mirror. Have a good look at yourself. That's something we often hear. But let me take you back to the mid 1800s. The mid 1800s. At that time, there were a large number of women who were dying very shortly after giving birth from a disease that in those days was called childbed fever. There was a Hungarian doctor in those days called Dr. Ignaz Semmelweis. Now, he took it upon himself to find out what was going on, and here is the great doctor. You can see it was a long time ago. So at the hospital that he worked at, there were two clinics. One was staffed by doctors, one was staffed by midwives. The number of deaths in the clinic that was staffed by doctors was far higher than in the clinic that was staffed by the midwives. Now, the big difference here was that the autopsies autopsies were being performed by doctors in their clinic, but not by midwives in theirs. And what the doctor discovered, Dr. Semmelweis that is, he discovered that the doctors were not washing their hands between performing the autopsies and then going on to deliver babies, which meant that disease was being passed to the women who were having their babies, ultimately leading to their deaths. Dr. Semmelweis then was absolutely adamant about the cause and went about trying to tell the doctors that they were the problem here. They wouldn't accept it. They would not accept it, that it was their fault. Carried on in the same way, and those deaths continued for 30 years, unbelievably 30 years, until the message finally got through. The doctors started washing their hands and the deaths reduced and eventually disappeared. A great example, really, albeit in the 1800s, but a very real example of people not taking accountability for their own actions, not accepting that they are the problem. And so it really is important as referees, I think, that we take responsibility, that we are accountable, we don't blame others for stuff that goes wrong, for our own failings, if you like. So often I see and I hear and I read about referees who will blame observers for a poor mark. Whether the observer is right or wrong, do not be blaming observers for a poor mark. Take a step back, reflect, and consider that actually maybe it was you who didn't do something quite as well as you might have done, or as well as you thought you should have done. Don't blame your assistants, ever don't blame your assistants. Whether you think they've done something wrong that might have caused you to make an incorrect decision, do not be blaming your assistants. Absolutely talk to them, reflect, discuss, but don't be blaming your assistants. Don't be blaming the players for some of the faults that you have. Take a good look at yourself first. It's really important that we take accountability, we take responsibility, and we do what we can to make ourselves better without trying to blame others for our own failings. Last, not last, penultimately, don't Don't procrastinate. I think this is a really interesting one, and I'm going to go back to cricket action. I heard, again, I don't know if any of you are cricket fans, and if you are, you might have been watching the 100, the new tournament. If you're not, then you won't know what I'm on about probably. But within the 100, there's a woman cricketer called Abtahar Maqsood, a Scottish Muslim, who is one of the world's best leg spin bowlers, actually doing tremendously well. She's essentially playing semi-professional cricket whilst at the same time studying to be a doctor. So this woman is a busy woman and a very successful woman. And her number one tip for remaining successful, for staying on top of her various demands, or the demands placed on her, is not to procrastinate too much. And let's be clear what I'm talking about here. So people who procrastinate are those who delay doing stuff, who delay taking action. And we all know people like that, right? We all know people like that. Actually, the most successful people don't do that. They do stuff. They take action. They might not always get it right, and that's where the self-reflection, comes in. But don't procrastinate. Get stuff done. Even if you are busy doing 101 different things, but make your actions precise, make them calculated, be accountable, set yourself some decent goals. And I said this a little bit earlier, don't be afraid to fail. And I sort of talk about having a bias towards experimentation. Not necessarily suggesting you experiment on the pitch, in the middle of a cup final necessarily. That's probably not the right time. But there are times in your refereeing journeys, and as you prepare for matches, and as you think about what you might and might not do, where there are really appropriate times to experiment. Be prepared to fail. I said this earlier, didn't I? Because only by doing that, you'll get these valuable insights. There are a couple of different types of procrastinators, and I just ask you to consider whether you recognise any of these things in yourselves. Hopefully you don't. If you do, then think about how you might be able to change, because successful people are the ones who get stuff done and sometimes fail doing it, actually. First one then, the perfectionist. People who really do sweat the small stuff, and sometimes the more you sweat the small stuff, the less likely you are to get on with actually doing stuff. Often the small stuff doesn't really matter, and I'm going to take you to right at the start where we talked about playing the long game and thinking beyond the horizon. That links into this very, very nicely. I do accept, of course, that the detail, the small stuff, is really important for refereeing on the field of play. You've got to get that detail right. Of course you have. But in your preparation, in the way that you train, in stuff that might get in the way, try and separate what is meaningful and what is meaningless, and get on and do. The dreamer, the person who spends ages sitting back with a cigar and whiskey or whatever it might be, a Ribena, and thinking about what they're going to do. And it's nice to have grand plans, isn't it? It's nice to have grand goals, and they're important as well if you're playing the long game. But if it means that you're not putting that plan into action, even taking small steps to get to that end goal, then having those dreams are useless. How many of us know people who have got this grand dream that never, ever, ever gets off the ground because they've spent too long thinking about it? Stop dreaming. Get on with doing. The avoider. So this is the person who avoids the challenging stuff, deals with the easy stuff, avoids the challenging stuff. I must confess that there are times when I fit into this bracket. And I'm thinking particularly about work here. If there's something that's particularly challenging, I have been known to avoid it for a period of time. Not because I don't know how to deal with it, but just because there's something that's a little bit easier to deal with. All that happens is it comes around, it bites me on the on the you know what, and I have to deal with it in the end. So actually dealing with the challenging bits, getting them done first, getting them out of the way can mean that you can then focus on the nice stuff. And finally, yeah, the crisis maker, and this is a little bit like the avoider, really, I suppose. But this is the person who leaves stuff till the last minute, and people will often justify that to themselves by saying, well, you know, if I leave it to the last minute, I feel under a little bit of pressure, good pressure. It means I get it done better. Well, I do accept there are people who thrive on that pressure and can get stuff done better in the last minute. But actually, for 90% of us, that is not the way forward. Leaving it to the last minute because you can't be bothered doing it earlier on is generally not a decent approach. So let me ask you this question, and feel free not to share here. That's absolutely fine. So I suppose the question I'll ask you is to consider whether you fit into one of these brackets. Do you procrastinate? And if you do, think about how it might be affecting your progress, your potential success. And if it is, think about how you might be able to change it. And finally, last but not least, and this is going to sound really, 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 really woolly, but you're not going to get very far in life. But in this context, and you're refereeing careers, if you're not a good person, if you're not authentic. What I mean by that is by being authentic is by saying and doing the stuff that you actually believe in, Don't go around telling people stuff just because they want to hear that you think is what they want to hear, because eventually the cracks will appear. And what do I mean by being a good person? Because that means different things to different people. But think about people you know who are successful. Think about some of their attributes. Now, they might be driven, they might be brilliant at what they do, they might be academically brilliant, they might be intelligent, you know, all sorts of things that contribute to being successful. The successful people that I know, that I consider to be my friends, and there are lots of them, are good people. They're kind, they're honest, they're loyal, they're generous with their time. They don't judge, they don't criticize. Mostly, they are people about whom everybody else says, that is a good person. He or she is a good bloke. I like that person. And if you've got people saying that about you, you might not get to the top. You might do. There's loads of other things that come into play, but I'd say that the vast majority of us, yes, we want to be successful. We want people to consider us to be a good person, and that's not the same as being liked. We all want to be liked, of course, but that doesn't always happen. We want to be respected. Sometimes that doesn't happen. But being a good person is really, really important. So 7 tips, quite broad tips. Hopefully I've been able to relate them to refereeing a little bit. Does anybody have any questions or observations at this point? Let me ask a different question, and hopefully the answer is going to be yes. And if you want to stick a thumb up, that'd be great. You don't have to say anything. Is there anything that anybody will take away from these last 45 minutes or so that they think might help them as they go about their business?
I definitely will. I'll jump in there, save the awkward silence that has followed. It's definitely something there, and there's loads of different areas, particularly around the procrastination area. I think everyone's kind of guilty to that to an extent. Not too much, though, Phil, I promise. But it's just understanding where we can learn from and what we can utilise, particularly that mental health aspect as well. I'm rubbish at looking after my own mental health. I'll openly admit that. It's looking at ways that we can adapt our working environment and our footballing environment to suit that, and getting the right people around us to support that as possible.
If I can come in, Richard, something that that you made me think of is that refereeing is something that I don't actually think about too much. I'm a massively keen golfer, a coach. These are things that I absolutely look at the small detail. I try to be a perfectionist, the mechanics of a golf swing, etc., etc. What I love about refereeing is that I turn up. We know it's a game of football. I love football. It's something I've done for years and years and years. And I let the game flow and I watch it and I love it. And actually, refereeing is the best thing for my mental health. So looking elsewhere as to what helps your mental health, actually refereeing is one of those things. It's something that yes, you're switched on, but it's something that I feel comes natural to me. And it's something where I don't put the pressure on myself. I actually do it because I enjoy watching the game. And I try and do it to the best of my ability. But honestly said, sometimes they get annoyed with me and sometimes I get it in the neck. But I do it and I try and do my best. And as you say, you try to be a good person. And I think about the poem, The Man in the Glass, when I'm doing it. And if I can look at myself at the end of it and feel that I've done the best that I can, then I can go away happy. I find that refereeing, probably I do better because I don't think about it as much as other sports and things like that. So a lot of this resonates with me. But as the Nelson Mandela thing you said, I just wanted to listen actually today. So and I really appreciated listening to you. You're a very good person to hear, and so I thank you.
Well, Andrew, thanks for coming on and sharing that. So just to pick up on the point you make about referee. I mean, so again, I'm sort of paraphrasing slightly, and I think I've captured this quite. I hope I've captured this actually. That kind of refereeing is a bit of a release for you, and lots of people that I've spoken to who are referees who do have some mental health problems will tell me that for them refereeing is that thing that allows them to just switch off from all of the stresses and all of the mental health problems that they have from Monday to Friday or whatever it is. And for them, refereeing is that thing. And there are far more people who say to me that refereeing is the thing that works for them than say refereeing is the thing that causes me to have my mental health problems. And that, I think, is really, really excellent. So what you've described there, I think, is a really strong message for others on the call to kind of take away there. And, you know, can't take it too seriously, can we? Unless you are looking to push to the top and so on. It is a game of football. Of course, we have to be absolutely conscious of the fact that, you know, for those players that you're refereeing, every week that's going to be their most important game. Every week that's going to be the most important game. And to that end, we must take it absolutely seriously and professionally. But that doesn't mean you have to be all stressed out about it at all. And I guess, Andrew, that your approach, probably your relaxed approach, I'm guessing will help you to be a much better referee than if you went into it all angsty about it.
Yeah, I think so. I'll give you another example. I mean, I am a UEFA big coach, and I took my team to 5 minutes from winning the league and coming second because we somehow didn't achieve it. And you work your backside off to try and achieve that ultimate goal. And you try and you try and you try. Well, actually, sometimes when you don't try, you actually get the best out of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Really good point. Thank you very much. Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Lovely job. Is there anybody else who would like to come in at this point? No? All right, there we go. Well, look, Sam might want to say a word or two, but from my perspective, thank you all very much for giving up an hour or so of your evening this evening. I really appreciate it. And, you know, like I say, if there's one little thing you can take away that helps you out, then, you know, the jobs are good, as they say. The jobs are good. Sam.
Perfect, Richard. Firstly, thank you very much for your time and giving up your time this evening. I know you're always very, very busy, so appreciate you taking an hour out of your day to support what we're trying to achieve and support our workforce with. So next time I see you, I'm sure I can settle up with you in a manner that is appropriate, but for your time. So I'll let you come to your own conclusion on what that might be. Just for the rest of the week and the rest of the group, for those of you that weren't with us, and there's a few that weren't with us last night, we've got one final session left where we're joined by Lee Waters, the Senior Lecturer of Sports Psychology out of University Centre of Peterborough, who will look into areas that Richard's briefly touched upon tonight, but around preparing yourself mentally during a game pre-match and looking after that and staying mentally strong during a match as well. Lee's fantastic. I've heard him before, and he's really passionate about what he does. And you may have seen his name pop about with different PhDs that he's working on during the time, and particularly the eye tracker movements, where he's worked with match officials to come to that kind of piece of work. In terms of, I'll skip that slide and that one. In terms of moving forward, the season's obviously kicking off imminently. 10th of August is the County League start date. Ensure your close dates are all appropriately up to date as well. If you've not advised us of what leagues you want to officiate on, utilise that link there to do so that we can point you to the leagues that you actually want to referee on as well. Again, as always, we're looking for mentors, we're looking for observers to support with our new workforce. If you're interested in joining us, whether it's one Saturday a month or more or less, then anything you can offer would be fantastic. Again, let us know using the link there. I'll drop them both in the chat, and they're both in the most recent newsletter that went out last month. In terms of other CPDs and sessions that we're going to be running, support drop-in sessions utilising every other Wednesday starting from the 15th of September. So there'll be free open sessions similar to this, where you can just drop in, post questions from your games of the weekend, ask questions that you might have seen on TV around the laws of the game or situations like that, or just drop in for a chat. Richard's talked about the mental health side of things there as well. Sometimes just having that chat with someone that's outside of that original circle of friends can come in useful. So those sessions will always be there every other Wednesday starting from the 15th of September. We've also then got the group for the level 5 to 4s and level 4 referees that will continue from last season. We'll also be running every other month sessions on the last Monday of each month starting from the 25th of October. And then for those of you that are moving into adult football for the first time, there'll be a progression core session for you, one-to-one coaching and support there for you to get comfortable in an environment that will be new to you as well. Alongside all of that will be our pre-recorded monthly content that will go out via our YouTube channel. That will start from September. If you've got any topics that you want us to cover, please do let us know. Otherwise, we'll be going blind and trying to work out what might be best rather than actually what you want to achieve and what you want to see. Please do let us know, and we can utilise that as much as possible. That is the end of tonight's session. Thank you all for joining. And once again, Richard, thank you very much for your time and energy tonight. Wonderful as always. Phil, any final words from you?
No, not really. I think it's proven what Richard's done tonight that there's something to take away, and it's really enjoyable. So thanks, Richard. Appreciate that. And season starts next week for some people, don't they?
Yes, it does.